mornings are my time to study.
Yeah.
That's my best time.
Right.
And every morning this past week was just
full of other things.
full of everything else. And it was just like, slogging through molasses to try to get anything done. Yeah.
More and more, the older I get, and as you've made very clear, I'm not very old yet, but the older that I get, it does feel like the day's kind of over after lunch. It's like my time of productivity has come to an end.
Yeah.
Now it's time to take a siesta, as they say in Spain, and just enjoy thoughts of what energy the next day can bring.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You run on a rhythm. Of course,
Sure.
I'm not telling you that, anything you don't know.
I don't even
But, some people's rhythm, like Debbie. Debbie is not a morning person.
Oh, okay.
But now she can work until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning.
I don't know how people.
And I don't know how they do that either. Truett was that way.
Oh, really?
Criswell was the opposite way.
He was up in the morning.
Truett was up to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning studying.
Yeah.
Criswell was up very early in the morning, or early in the morning. He'd use his mornings.
It is interesting how we're built differently. I was talking with Chris Johnson about that the other day. We were comparing notes on our different seminary experiences. And
Yeah.
he was like, "Yeah, always late at night. I'd put the kids to bed. I'd go," and I'd be like, "There is nothing that puts me to sleep quicker
Yeah.
than old theology books after I put the kids to bed."
Yeah.
You're hanging your head already. You
Yeah.
must be tired.
No, I'll sit in the den in the chair, and I've got a stack of books here, and I've got a computer and everything here. And so if we're watching something, most nights not most nights, but a lot of nights we don't watch anything. We
Right.
just sit there. She's reading, and
Right.
I'm going through, flipping through. Now that's an okay time for me.
Right. Yeah.
I can get back to it at that point.
Yeah, that's good. Well, so what do you
Until about 9 o'clock or so,
Yeah. And then it's shutdown mode.
And then it's, go to bed.
That's when all the aches and pains, and I'm going to talk to you more about that.
And
later.
that's when Debbie just gets started.
Yeah, she's ready to go. That's when she.
I go to bed and I listen. She's on the phone with her sisters.
That is.
And I'm just thinking, thank the Lord. I'm in bed and she's in there talking to her sisters.
I remember when I first got married, and I'd come home, or my wife would come home, or whatever, and she'd be on the phone. And I'm like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm talking to my sister. I'm like, "You talked to her yesterday."
Oh my gosh!
Why are you talking to her again?
It's how many times a day?
It really is
So-
amazing. And I tried to call my brother, one of my brothers, this past week, and he didn't even pick up. And my wife was like, "Why are you calling him?" And as if I needed a reason. But I said, "Well, I haven't talked to him in like 3 weeks." She's like, 3 weeks? I'm like,
Yeah.
And then we talk, and then she's like, "So tell me, how's his daughter doing? What's going on with this?" I'm like, "I don't know. We just talked about football for an hour or whatever, old video games, whatever it is we talk about." So you're sitting there and you're about to go to bed. What are you studying these days? Because your doctorate is done, your PhD is done. What are you doing to keep yourself?
Well, I'm usually reading something. I'm usually sitting there trying to figure out a passage and working a little bit on that, or looking for an illustration or something. Or I'm reading a book right now, and it's a brand new book. It's just out on Herod, which is really interesting. And I've got several books I've just got to finish up. There's a book on Tut that I've been reading.
Yeah.
And I was reading in Egypt, and a new book that's out on Zwingli.
Oh, interesting.
That I've got to finish, and I don't even know where that book. I can't find that book now. But I'm preparing for Mid-America because I've got to do a couple of breakout sessions. I preach, and then, I'm going to
conference in May.
No, it's not in May. I forget when. I think maybe it's in August or something. But I'm doing a breakout session on, and I'm going to talk about the hermeneutics of the Anabaptists, which are basically recovered the hermeneutics that we are teaching today. And nobody's interested in that. But
I think it's fascinating. I've learned a lot just about who we are as Baptists. You're teaching me more stuff all the time.
So
side note, I finally got it. I understand now why you've got this new desire to study all the history from Egypt. I figured it out.
Wasn't it?
It's because you've completely exhausted all the British history.
No,
You've
I
read
haven't.
everything.
No, that
You're
was
full-
my.
It's done.
Well, my last year I spent the year. I kind of dedicated the year to English history.
Yeah.
And I loved it so much, I decided I'm going to do that this year. And I have completely come off the rails.
Oh boy.
Just running after this and this and this and this and this.
Speaking of British history, I don't know how the Twitter algorithm, Lord only knows how all that's calculated. But I've got this, there's this guy, I don't even know what his name is, but he does tailoring analysis for all of like the British nobles in the 19th and 20th century. And I find it fascinating. So thank you, Twitter. I don't know how you knew that.
Wow, I don't know.
I'll have to send you a couple of those. He
Yeah.
did well when he was Prince Charles, back when he was like
Right.
married to die, and like it was just really interesting. He's like, he's doing this, and it's clearly from this shop, and I'm like, how do you know all this? It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you talked about this stack of books that you've got, which made me think of a question. Are you going to do your book club thing again this year?
I don't know. I missed that. And that was not mine. That was the ladies' ministry.
Okay.
Yeah, and they just asked me a couple of times, would you lead one of these for us? And I had such a great time. I did the book on Lincoln on his train trip to Washington and through Baltimore, by the way,
Right.
where there was a plot too.
Assassinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of your kinfolks, I understand.
Different up there.
And then I did one on that book that everybody read. It was a very good book.
Yeah, the ruthless elimination of hurry, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. So, if I just had a mind, I could remember what I read.
We need to.
Yeah, but I would like to do another one. But I've really not come across a book that I really am carried away with
Okay.
enough to do it.
So when it happens, when that happens, you heard it here first. Pastor's going to do. Well, actually, we could call back last week. So when Pastor finishes his new book, Your Best Life Now, he's going to do a whole book club about that. You guys can read it together and all experience your best life now together.
We're in trouble if that's true.
So we were talking about the early morning. I actually slept in today. It was one of those days where I accidentally hit my
Snooze.
I didn't hit the snooze. I turned the whole thing off, and I woke up and it was 6 already, and I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so I had a shortened quiet time today, but you know what I did? I turned on a sermon from E.V. Hill.
Did you really?
Yeah, and that's what I listened to.
What did you listen to?
It was The Narrow Way. That's
Yeah.
what it was. I wanted to find the one, what in hell are you looking for?
Yeah, what
I
in
still
hell
need
are
to
you
find
looking
that.
for?
I couldn't find that, so this one was the top hit, and it was in black and white. And it was from...
No, it's What in Hell Do You Want?
What in Hell Do You Want?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the first sermon I ever heard him preach. And I thought, my stars, man, you'd be fired out of a Baptist church if you did that, if you said that. But when you got to listening to his sermon, it made perfect sense.
Yeah, it really does make perfect sense. He was talking about the narrow way, and the illustrations were so good, and he'd get really fine, he'd go really high, and like it's almost like the MLK sort of thing, the vibrato as and I was just like, man, I love this. It just gets you fired up.
He's good. He is good.
So thanks for that recommendation, E.V. Hill. Was that that was close to your, that was your closing illustration.
Yeah, it was.
With his wife, it was...
Yeah, in his funeral. I listened to his funeral message, her funeral message that he preached a number of times back when she passed away. And then he married a beautiful young lady who was Sammy Davis Jr.'s secretary.
Get out of here.
No. And he told me, he said, the day I announced that we were getting married, he said, I had 70 women leave the church. So they were all hoping they were going to be the next Miss E.V. Hill. So I thought, that's funny.
That's ridiculous. I've got so many things still to talk to you about because it was just so packed with things. Last night we had the business meeting, which you taught me something last night. And you really got me thinking because I opened up the business meeting and I was just like, guys, this isn't a worship service, but we're still going to open with song and focus on the right things. I thought I heard
that. That was why that was on my mind.
And I said that, and then you got up there and you were like, well, this actually is a worship service. And I was like, Huh. Now it really makes sense that it is. I mean, you
Yeah.
have a go
I
ahead.
want you to worship.
Yeah. Well, and you had a short time in the Word, and you always give us kind of a benediction at the end, so
Yeah.
it still has that shape to it.
Yeah.
And
It is carrying out the business of the church is worship. It should be worship,
yeah, I think I just
which
needed
ought to
that.
eliminate a lot of the haranguing that goes on in business meetings.
I just hadn't thought of it that way before. But I looked it up. I was thinking about it. I didn't
Son,
do
I'm
much
glad I
research.
can impart some wisdom to you.
You do all the time. Well, I looked it up, and I think I need to do more research on it. But I think even Criswell had a quote about like how the business of the church is worship or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. But I didn't have enough time to read that. I was too busy listening to E.V. Hill.
Well, Criswell would always, his thing was, all in favor, and that's all of us. Never took a no vote in his life. All in favor, and that's all of us.
Well, I think you almost did that one time when
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
the vote for the membership, and it was on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And there are none opposed. Anyway, moving on with the worship
Yeah,
service.
yeah.
Why would anybody be opposed to this?
Really?
And I thanked Dave last night because I thought he did such a helpful job of like showing us the people coming
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
And here's why. Obviously, every church, there's some people that have moved their membership or they left the state and that sort of thing. And that was just,
They've left the country.
they're running away.
You saw all the people that were flying out the day of tax day. No
didn't even
joke.
think
I mean,
about
it was
that.
an article. There was a big article on there of all the rich people that were flying out of the country on that day to get out of the country before tax day came up.
Is that like is it a tax evasion strategy?
I guess
What's
so. I don't know. I don't have to worry about that. So.
Yeah, those rich people problems. That is so funny. I
yeah.
never thought about that.
So I just thought about that when you said some people have left the state.
I have to call some
left the
rich
country.
people.
Yeah.
It might be an international charge to give them a call. So yeah, they've left the country. That some people have left the church. That happens. The life of every church. We have so many people coming to the church. I saw on the list there's just so many people that have been baptized, young people that have been baptized that are now part of the church. That was really cool.
It gets me the number of college students. I'm baptized 2 weeks ago. This young lady from Tuscaloosa. It's at University of Alabama.
Yeah.
She comes over here to church. She came over
Yeah.
here. We baptized her. The number of older teens and college students. And it's surprising the number of people that are in their 60s and 70s.
That's right. Yeah, it really is an interesting crew. Obviously, got a lot of young families as well. We had
Yeah.
the parent-child dedication a couple of weeks back. It's just a really good time. That was just the sort of the tenor in the room. This is just a great time in the life of the church. Rob Compton even said that. He's like, I've been a member here 27 years, and
They
let me
got
just tell you.
40 children that are going to go
On mission trips.
with their parents on mission trips.
That's pretty cool.
Which I think that's what we did with our kids.
Yeah.
From the time that, I think Will's was maybe 11 when he went on his first, we took him to Ukraine. And, the other kids, we took them. I think Debbie took Courtney when she was 14 or 15. It turned her life around.
Yeah.
And
It
she
really
felt
changes
called to
you.
missions at that point in time and went to the Middle East for several years. So
That was my wife's testimony as well. Like she took this long trip to Honduras in college, and she regularly will talk about how that really changed her life.
Yeah.
It really does change you. That's the thing. If you have not been on a mission trip before, that's a common misunderstanding. You think you're going to somehow make a difference, and you will, but
the difference that's made in you. Yeah.
it will probably be larger, comparatively speaking. I know that
yeah.
I can say that
Always.
just with those years I spent in China.
Yeah.
Really, really changed my perspective on so many things. Well, yesterday you started off, and I wanted to thank you for this. You started off by just applying what you preached the previous week, which was the postures of worship.
Mm-hmm.
and the doctors finally cleared you to kneel down again.
No.
So
I
you're
got
able
down
to
there. I
kneel.
couldn't. Wait, was it Wayne Sellers?
Was he out there? Yeah,
Yeah.
he was in the front row.
Did
he come and get you up?
No. His wife, his sweet wife, ran.
Marie.
Yeah, and Wayne said, "I taught you." I said, "That's right. Send your wife." He said, "Well, I thought you were kidding." I said, "No, brother, I'm not kidding. I can't get up."
But you were warmed up in the second service.
Yeah.
You
I got up better in the second service.
Well, if I would have known, I would have stayed out there with you and helped you out. I'm sorry.
Almost caught you and said, "Just stay here until I get back up."
I didn't know you could do that. That's my bad. I was backstage.
So I would have gladly taken a hand and somebody pulled me up. My muscles aren't working that well as of yet.
They're coming back. I got to tell you, you started our time today talking about how tired you are, but and you might be fatigued, but you are from where I'm sitting, you're a different guy. You have a different level of energy. Just there's a brightness to you. I love it. You're just a star. You're bright and shining.
Thank you.
So to the message itself. Now yesterday, wow, I love it. I don't know if you noticed it, but I love it when the Lord just kind of aligns the whole service. There were so many things in the music.
Yes.
You even said something about blessed assurance. I didn't plan that.
Yeah.
So it's just good.
That and that song, the new song that y'all sang, I guess it was new.
Yeah, it's newish, the throne room song.
And I try my best to remember. I want to remember a phrase out of it, but I can't remember it. And I think, no, you're not going to remember it when you get up there. But there was a phrase in that I thought was so apropos to this.
Yeah, just this idea. I mean, I guess thinking through it, there's that sense when you do enter the throne room, you do actually then at that point have the true strength to comprehend the height and the breadth and the depth of the love of Christ. That was the hope for me. And actually, I'm going out of order here, but I thought I want you to explain that part again when Paul's talking about, I'm praying for you to understand what is the height and the breadth, and how did that relate to the pagan culture in Ephesus?
In that God would reassure. You've got somebody that's grown up in this very dark, very demonic, very spirit-oriented, cult-oriented, and you wonder, am I ever really set free? Is there some part of me that is still under the control of this darkness? Is there some part of me? No, because His love has been able to go the length, the height, the depth, the breadth of your life. It's covered every area. And I talked about, we see in 3 dimension. We don't see in 4 dimension.
Yeah, I love that point.
So there's that 4th dimension. I'm always wondering, is there a dimension out there that I don't see that still has some kind of grip on me? No, because His love has penetrated to every little corner, every little crack, every little, niche out there, so that you can be assured.
I think that is a really important note, even in our modern era, like people, whether they're escaping something that they understand to be demonic oppression, witchcraft, dark arts, that sort of thing, or even addiction. Like if they come out of some kind of substance addiction, yes, they come to Christ, but there's this fear, like, does it still have a hold on me in some way?
And through the years, you have people that come up and say, I did something years ago, and I just don't know that God's really ever forgiven me of that. Well, sure He has, and that's kind of the concept. I was trying to move so rapidly at that point through that last point that I really couldn't take the time to.
Well, take the time now if you
to go
want to preach
through.
to us.
Well, I don't want to do that, but it comes down to that third hina clause there, that you may be filled up to all the fullness of God.
Okay.
Filled up with what? Filled up with His love. Filled up with the love of Christ. And how does that begin to operate? Well, I go back to the end of verse 17, that you be rooted and grounded in love. The mixed metaphor, botanical and architectural, but they're both talking about what is under the surface, what's not seen. Is what holds this building up is what you don't see. That's the foundation that's down there. And then he goes into that so that you'll be able to comprehend all the saints, with all the saints, that is together. we better understand the love of God when you look at all the people around you
Of course.
in the fellowship, and you think to yourself, well, that person's a nut, but I better understand. You know what? God loves them just like they are. Yeah, you know, that when we come together, we're able to talk, we're able to discuss, we're able to look at one another's lives and see what God has done. And I'll give you for example, I'll never forget being at this guy's church, and a guy from my high school days came up, and I discovered he's one of his leading deacons. And we just look at each other and shake our heads because we were not the closest of friends in high school, but we were both living as a rebellious life as you could live. And I'm thinking, wow, you mean this guy got saved? And he's looking at me saying,
same thing.
Wow, you mean you guys, and you're preaching, you know, kind of deal?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like as the people come to, we comprehend better the love of God when we're like that. So, and he goes into that breadth and length and height and depth, which covers areas that I'm not even aware of.
Well, you talked about the different love that he has for each person in the congregation. Mm-hmm. But there's a sense in which each person in their uniqueness is also showing a different aspect of his love. Like as they express love to other people.
Yes.
And that is such a challenge to me, like even in our diversity as people, like men and women, and then young and old, like the different expressions of love, but all of that belongs to God.
That's right.
I think that's so interesting. It's a similar analogy to what you used when you talked about like looking at, I think you said a cube, like a three-dimensional cube. You know it's in 3 dimensions, but you can only see the two or the two or three sides at once. Yeah.
You know, if you got a cube like that and you turn it, and I can see the top, and I can see this side and this side.
Yeah.
I can't see that side over there. Can't see the bottom. Can't see that back side. So if I turn it this way, I'm still looking at 3. So it's that 4th dimension. It's a dimension that we don't see, but that God has covered.
He has it covered. He does know it. He does understand it. So yeah, that's a great application, not just with his love, but also the trust that we need to have, you know, because the cube, you're only seeing the 3 sides. You have to trust that the other 3 exist, right? Yeah. But God sees it all at once. We trust him. Yeah, that was just really helpful. I can see that when you said that, it finally helped me see why Paul put that in there. There's just so much going on in the text.
So much. I could go back and preach this text and do it totally different. It would be similar, but I could approach it in a different way. This is just the rich. That's why I stopped at 19, because I think 20 and 21. I think I'm going to preach just those 2 verses Sunday.
Yeah.
Which kind of end the prayer, but there's so much in this. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us. And I think we neglect that part of it, the power that works within us.
Well, that was your first point, the inner man.
Yeah, you know, the inner man. God's down there, the Spirit's down there, working in that deep part of us. And I had a number of people come out and say, hey, thank you for explaining the difference between soul and spirit. And we do. I do this. I do it. That, you know, you interchange the words, but if you have to stop and think back through what is soul, suke, what is spirit, pneuma, and what does that mean, you know, for each one. So, and normally we would think that they're opposite, that the spirit animates your life and the soul is that part of you that, and in a sense, I mean, your spirit is still going to be you. It's not going to turn into somebody else.
Yeah, I guess it's...
So that when we're glorified, when Christ raises us and gives us that glorified body, Kirkwood, you're still going to be Kirkwood.
Yeah.
But you're going to be a perfect Kirkwood. Can anybody imagine that?
My wife definitely thinks about all the imperfections I have right now, so she might imagine that. Anyway, yeah, well, and I think there's some interchangeability there. It feels similar to the Trinity, you know, like where you're trying to describe the difference in these things, you know. as I understand it, there's some theologians that don't even see a dichotomy there. They just
Yeah.
say that the soul and the spirit are one. I liked your explanation, talking about like that the one is more the expression of the personality. I of course loved it when you were talking about like how this is our spirit is where we worship. We worship in spirit
Right.
and in truth, that
Right.
sort of thing. So
Yeah, it's that part is. I'm trying to look for a passage here.
taking us somewhere. Yeah, you could do a whole series on the pneumatology, and then I guess it'd be more like an anthropology because like we're more than just physical, right?
Yeah, we
just
are.
like the other
There's the trichotomy that some people talk about. Some people just get so far off into this stuff that, it becomes a hobby horse, I guess. But anyway.
Well, so back to verse 20 and 21. So that is clearly a close to this. I mean, the book is fairly evenly divided.
It really is.
I guess I should say. You talked when you started, and I don't know if you said this to the congregation, you definitely said it to the staff, how the first half of Ephesians is God's devotion to us. Mm-hmm. And then the second half really is, what is our devotion to God?
Yeah, how do we turn around? Because now, when you get into chapter 4, verse 1, you're going to begin to get into all of these imperatives, these commands.
Right,
These are the things, this is what you're to do. As a result, we're no longer to be children tossed here and there by waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine. And it just goes through this. So I say and affirm together with the Lord that you walk no longer as the Gentiles also walk, in the futility of their mind. And so he's just given all of this. Therefore, be imitators of God. Yeah, he's going through and he's giving you all these things that we are to do now that expresses our devotion back to God.
Well, and I hope we do. I mean,
I hope so too.
I mean, this is so densely packed when you get into the commands and then also just the cross references to the other places that these commands are referenced in Scripture. I mean, I've seen people do entire series on just the armor of God.
Yeah.
Obviously,
and we're probably going to do that, but we'll probably do that on a Wednesday night.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because
Cool.
that's a whole series in and of itself right there. Just the armor of God.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. And then also, just all of everything like the things on marriage and how you live as a family, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm really excited for where the Word has taken us and where you're going to take us in the days to come. Well, did we miss anything with regards to your message yesterday? Oh, well, we had a correction.
Uh-oh.
Because you mentioned Kanye West against your better judgment.
Yeah, I did.
And you were talking about his wife, but he's divorced now.
Did they divorce? I saw a thing on the paper. She had more clothes on. I get up in the mornings
It's
and
Kim,
I look
right?
at that.
Is it?
No,
He's got a new wife.
Yeah,
He's married
it's
to the one that comes.
she's from
wearing a cover
Australia.
head to toe or something.
yeah. She
Wow,
had
so
on a
Pastor's
full,
more up on the pop culture than I am.
Yes.
What can I say?
The corrector has been corrected.
Yeah, she's from Australia. Yeah, I think that's where she's
Yeah,
from.
Australian architect and model.
But the
An entrepreneur.
and I hate to even bring it up, but it's the point I'm trying to make. Look at this couple. That's what this world is looking at.
The world is all about the surface.
The outside, this and the that and the other. But I saw today, this morning in the Daily Mail, which is British newspaper.
Yeah.
And she's coming out of the airport with him, and she's got on more clothes than she's had on in the last year. She's clothed. She's decent looking in the picture, and they made the comment, something's wrong, something's happened, something. Now, isn't that something? Well, the woman has clothes on today, so we know that there's a problem in the marriage. So it's just crazy. But the whole
Joanne is
point
trying to
was
show me who this person
he's
is.
trying that the Holy Spirit is
yeah.
working on the
Completely
inner.
covered up over here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so weird. So this is Jared. Are you listening?
Yeah.
All right. So Pastor knows more about pop culture than I do. This is a good day.
What?
I thought I was
well.
going to correct him, and he corrected me.
Oh no, he and Kim have been divorced for several years now. She's gone on to somebody else naturally, and
Well,
he's gone on to somebody else.
For-
In 2022.
So for every
And these two married in 2022.
Yeah.
So for everybody, thank you for all of our listeners here to the Sermon Recap Podcast, and for those waiting for the TMZ podcast to begin, that'll be Pastor Solo.
Yeah.
But I'm about to head out.
TMZ.
Not TMJ, TMZ. Love you guys. Say goodbye, Pastor.
Goodbye, Pastor.